Hello and welcome to Vermont Film Essentials. My name is David Metzger.
And I'm Lincoln L. Hayes. This week we are discussing Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. And right out of the gate, disclaimer time. We do not support Roman Polanski in his personal life. He did bad things. He's allegedly done other bad things. We're not here to talk about the bad things. We're here to talk about Rosemary's Baby. So Facebook troll, there. We took care of it. Thank you.
We're good. We're good.
Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's Baby.
Why'd you add it to the October list?
Well, if we're going to be doing a list of horror films for the month of October to get prepared for Halloween, Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite horror movies, and not a lot of people would think of it as a horror film, but I think this is like one of those cases where psychological thriller, but actually like a true horror film.
Yeah.
Like a
I feel
real
like anytime the
horror
devil
film.
comes in, you're like, yep, this is a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
First time you saw it?
When I first got to college, one of the DVDs that I brought with me was the Criterion Collection edition of Rushmore, and on that is a Charlie Rose interview with Wes Anderson. And at the end of that interview, he talks at length about that Roman Polanski is a director that he thinks about often, and in particular with the way that he directed Rosemary's Baby. And he's talking about that, and like a good little film dork doobie that I was, I went right out and I said, Wes Anderson likes Roman Polanski and Rosemary's Baby. I'm gonna watch it. So I got it, I watched it, and you know, as someone who once said that they didn't like horror films, it was just my kind of, you know, myopic reading of what a horror film was, and I thought it was just, you know, slasher, gore, you know, stupid little people running and a killer after them with a knife or an axe. But when I saw this, it was just like, okay, I'm so okay with calling this a horror film, and that this is the type of horror film that I enjoy. Just because of how much of a slow burn it is. Like with The Exorcist and The Shining, it's a horror film that like makes you want to forget that it's a horror film. Right. With the way that it's shot, the way that it's lit, not everything is macabre and dark and spooky. It looks like real life. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier. And then at the end it's just like, what is going on?
What is this movie?
And it's got like a very, there's some funny parts to this film.
Oh yeah.
And funny performances. And even at the end, it's almost ludicrous what happens and how it happens. And there's so many little like visual clues and visual jokes throughout the whole film that it just continues to keep you off balance as you're watching it. Yeah. And I did love, even when I first watched it, I loved that it never lets you know what type of film it is. And
it never shows its hand at all.
Right, and for the longest time, you're like, you know, is this really happening? Is she just going crazy?
Is this a hallucination?
Right.
What's going on here?
And it keeps that up for the whole film until the end, and it answers it for you. And it's a film with a surprise ending that earns its surprise ending. Totally. Like, it doesn't go crazy at the end, and you're
it's
like...
It's not a Shyamalan twist where you're like, that was it?
Right. Like, you can't do that. Like, this stuff really can't be real. Like, you think, like, oh, okay, it's real. Yeah. And that's completely okay and completely in keeping with this film. And the second time that you go back to it, you notice so many different things and how much this story was going on right underneath your nose, which I'm excited to talk about.
Nice.
But
My first viewing was this weekend. We had some friends in town who are horror movie buffs, and I was like, hey, you guys want to watch Rosemary's Baby? One of them's like, yes, I love that movie. The other one was like, yes, I've never seen that movie, which is surprising because he's the bigger of the horror buffs. So the four of us sat down and watched it. The one who hadn't seen it promptly fell asleep, as did Rachel. But then Alex and I stayed up and watched the rest of it. It is a very slow burn, but the performances are excellent. The cinematography is fantastic. I love seeing old New York, and obviously seeing the Dakota is really, really cool, even though it's called the Bramford in the film. And it's shot in a studio, and it's not the actual apartments, but still, it makes me want to pretend to want to rent an apartment there or buy an apartment. I thought that it was just absolutely excellent. It's the 60s slow burn horror film of, all right, when's this going to get scary? And it's like, it's scary the whole time if you're looking at the big picture. If you're thinking about what's actually going on, you're like very uncomfortable and very tense. And then once we do finally get to the climax and, you know, she gets into the room and the coven is there and there's the bassinet over there with the upside down cross, and you're just like, all of this is real. It was all real the whole time. Everything that's happened. And that it's not a jump out and scare you movie. It's a make you feel uncomfortable, and so you just want it to end.
Right.
And then it ends not how you think it will, and certainly not how you want it to. You want vengeance and you want justice and you want her to be redeemed or whatever, and that's just not how it goes. That's not how the story ends, and you just have to accept that. And it's a bit of a gut punch at the end that she does kind of turn, and you're like, no, but she's too far gone. She's lost, and we as the audience are just like, well, lost another one. But I very much enjoyed it. And having only seen Chinatown of Polanski's other films, the guy knows how to make a movie.
Yes.
He knows how to direct a film, and he knows how to get what he wants, and he's got a fantastic cinematographer for this film. And it's just, every piece of it has depth and life, and there's something going on in every shot. And even if there's not something going on, there's something else going on. And it's very, very engaging, even for a slow burn. Really liked it.
And I love in regards to Polanski and how he directs and how the decisions that he makes in directing his film. You know, I've always said that this film is like a perfect example if you want to say, like, if someone comes to you and says, what does a director do? Like, what's the job of the director? This is the film that springs to mind, just because, like we said, it's, you know, a psychological thriller. It's a, you know, a horror film, and it is shot like, he even says, like, he's like, I wanted it to have the color palette of a Rock Hudson, Doris Day romantic comedy.
Sure.
You know, all the lime greens and the pinks and the yellows. And it catches you completely off guard. And there's even like little things that he does where, like, you'll have that color palette and the shot is composed either in a door frame or inside the frame of another room. Yeah. And it'll either be that the outside room that you're seeing is the lime green, the yellow, or the pink, and the room that's inside and is framed is completely dark or just shadowed. Yeah. Or it's the other way around, and it's framed in like a dark shadow, and you've got this little portion, and that's exactly how, like, there's something dark and disturbing underneath all of this facade of the beautiful, perfect apartment.
So much of this film feels like you're a voyeur, like you're in the other room, just like peeking in and spying on people. And should I be here? Should I be watching this? And it's incredibly effective. And I have to imagine that as a cinematographer, you would see this on paper and be like, what are you doing? Like, shouldn't we get in for some, like, coverage or whatever? And it's like, no, let's shoot this from out here. Yeah. And then once you look at it, you go, yeah, okay. Right. Yeah, got it.
And, you know, the famous story that we've talked about where the cinematographer, William Fraker, he sets up a shot, and it's framed in a doorway like everything has been, and I believe it's when Ruth Gordon is on the phone, and he sets up the shot, and Ruth Gordon is perfectly framed in the doorway, and she's on the phone. And then Roman Polanski comes over, looks into the lens, and says, no, move it over here. And the cinematographer looks in the lens, and he's like, yeah, but you can't see her. And he's like, yeah, I know, it's great. And he's just like, oh, okay. And then he's watching it in the theater with an audience, and he sees everyone in that audience go, trying to see her. And that's Polanski. Like, that is the decision of a director who knows exactly what he's doing and the vision that he wants to put on the frame.
That's so much foresight to have that, to be like, all right, we have this scene. I'm intentionally going to make her obscured. I'm intentionally going to make it difficult for the audience to follow what's going on, so that collectively they will all lean over in the theater. I found myself doing it on my couch, like unconsciously, because she starts in frame and then she walks out of frame, and you want to follow her and be like, wait, where'd she go? But it's a movie, it's two-dimensional, there's nothing there.
Right.
It's like when you were a kid and you would like look into the TV to see where the rest of the pictures went. And brilliant.
And as the director, he knows that, okay, I've got this story that is a slow burn, and I need to guide the audience through this and make sure that they don't get bored. And you just want, it's such a subtle piece of direction, because, all he wants is for that audience to just be like, and just keep watching until whatever happens. And it's also interesting that it's almost like he's playing you, and he's playing on your emotions and what you expect of a movie, because the whole time you're like, I really hope this gets good and scary. I really hope this gets good and scary. And then he makes you pay for it, and it's like, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I don't want this.
Yeah. I didn't know we were going there. Oh, man. Oh, no. Should we talk about the plot a little bit?
Sure.
For anybody who hasn't seen it. Rosemary and her husband, Guy, are thinking about moving into the Bramford, aka the Dakota, on the Upper West Side of New York. An elderly woman has passed away in her apartment, so it's available. And Guy is an actor, she is a housewife, and they're planning to have children. And upon moving in, they meet their neighbors. And they seem like a perfectly fine older couple.
Played wonderfully by Ruth Gordon and Ralph Bellman.
And they're a little bit eccentric. They're a little bit loud and colorful and a little strange, but, probably harmless. She then meets a neighbor girl who's actually staying with them, kind of like a ward situation. She says that they basically picked her up off the street and rehabilitated her. She was into drugs and prostitution and other things. And then one night, she's found on the sidewalk, dead, seemingly committed suicide, jumping out the window. Or was it murder? We don't really know. And then just some weird stuff starts happening around her. She gets pregnant, and they're very interested in that. They're like, oh, how great. And they seem to forget, poor Terry. You should go see our doctor, Abe Saperstein. He's the best. Forget your doctor. He doesn't know anything. And then the doctor is very strange and says, I don't want you to talk to anybody about this. I don't want you to talk to your girlfriends. I don't want to talk to your mom or your aunt. Just listen to what I say, do what I say. Which, red flag. Red flag.
And here's this special herbal drink that you need to drink every day.
Herbalists weren't really a thing then. Like, it was medicine. You took medicine, and then that was it. So then, I forget her name, the neighbor, Ruth Gordon's character.
Oh, God.
Is it Minnie?
Yes, Minnie.
Minnie
Castevet.
Makes her this smoothie every morning. And it's got Terran root in it, which is not a thing. Ira Levin, who wrote the novel, made it up. It's not a thing. And she just has a very uncomfortable pregnancy. She always feels sick. She always feels weak. She has a pain in her stomach. And it goes on and on and on. And meanwhile, Guy is starting to get his star on the rise. He was up for a role in, I believe it was a TV show, lost it out to this other guy, and then randomly that guy went blind. Because that's a thing that just happens. You wake up blind one day. So his star is on the rise, his stock is on the rise, and while he's going up, Rosemary's going down. You see her, and she just looks like death. She's pale, she's sickly, she's always in pain. They have a party, all her girlfriends are like, what's going on? You look like crap. And those scenes are actually hard to watch, because if you've ever, been under the weather or been sick for any amount of time, people always telling you that you look like crap.
Right.
It's the last thing you want to hear. You're like, oh, great. Right. Everybody thinks I look terrible. I probably, But then something changes. Something happens, and then she feels fine. So she goes about her life, making a home and making the nursery and doing all this stuff, and continuing to take she stops taking the smoothies. And then as we get closer to the pregnancy, things keep getting weirder and weirder and weirder. And then we're into the third act of the film, and stuff just gets nuts. And you have to earn that slow burn. You have to go through all of that with Rosemary to really feel what she's feeling, that this is torture, this is agony. And then as soon as she stops doing what we as the audience know is what's causing her the ailments, then she's okay again and everything's going to be fine. But everything is not fine. Comes back to get her in the end. But it's Ira Levin, who wrote the book, says that this is the most faithful adaptation of any of his books to film that have ever been done. And the kind of rumor joke is that Roman Polanski didn't know that he could embellish or go off script, so he just did. Like, there are bits of the film, the dialogue is verbatim from the book. Color schemes, costume descriptions, things like that are exactly how they were in the book, and he just literally was like, with the book, typing the script. Obviously, I think the initial run was going to be like 4 hours, so they had to cut it down considerably and get rid of a handful of scenes and whatnot. But it definitely makes me want to read the book now.
Yeah.
There is a sequel to the book too, called Son of Rosemary, which did not do well. And they also made a sequel to the film, which did even worse. And frustratingly, as I was doing trivia for this, most of the trivia is about what happens in the sequel. And I'm like, I don't care. Tell me about this movie.
I love that this film is shrouded in such mystery and everything. But yeah, I mean, and listening to you describe that story and kind of go through kind of beat by beat and plot point by plot point, that is what you see on the first viewing. And then on the second viewing, it's so awesome because when they first go to see the Castavets, and they're invited in, and Guy's like, oh God, do we really have to do that? And they get there, and they're playing nice, and they're eating the stuff that they don't really like, but they're eating it anyway. There's a scene where Rosemary and Ruth Gordon are talking, and she looks over, and Guy is locked away with the husband, Roman, and it's another doorway shot, and you just see the smoke from his pipe going across the screen. And then the next scene, Rosemary and Ruth Gordon go into that room, and the first time you see it, this completely, you don't notice it, it goes over your head, and then the more you watch it, you see, and they walk in, and Guy is staring at Roman with this crazy look of, what did you just say to me? Because that Roman just said, I can give you everything that you want. I'm going to give you the actor's dream life. All I need you to do is get me something of that actor's wardrobe, and I want your baby.
Yeah.
Because I want the devil.
That's all.
So, and you watch that scene, and you watch him come in, and he's just like,
all right, now I gotta watch it again. And I'll be back in 2.5 hours.
And that's the whole time you think about that. And that is, first of all, Mia Farrow
knocks it out of the park.
Unbelievable in this movie.
So great.
And when I watched it first time in college, I'm just a stupid kid, and I'm not looking at it through the lens of a female protagonist or a female character. But the second that you do that, it is so horrible what she goes throughout this whole film.
Yeah.
And the moment that you realize that Guy was in on this from the start. And that it happened in that particular meeting, and that he heard, I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be famous.
And now, oh man, thinking about it through that lens, anytime he's watching TV, he's sitting this close to it like a child. He's just like so engrossed because, oh, here comes my commercial. Here comes my commercial. It's going to be great. Here comes more me.
And there's so many little little pieces of kind of like throwaway dialogue where you feel like that's an argument that they have. That's a tension in their relationship that they have from the start. That it's like, I'm sorry that I've been so self-involved, and you know, and Rosemary is trying to, you know, block away. It's like, it's understandable. Like, as an actor, you know, they're all a little vain and full of themselves from time to time. And
hey, wait a minute.
But I mean, and that is what is rich about this film, is that you can watch it over and over and over again and just still pick apart those details.
New pieces,
and for me, I'm completely in love with Ruth Gordon from this film and Harold and Maude, but she is so funny in this movie. And there's like when they're over and they're eating the pie, and she's eating it and she's looking at them trying, are you enjoying it? Are you enjoying it? I mean, she's so off the wall wacky and just ridiculous. And it's
her character almost doesn't belong in this movie.
Right, it's a comedic performance.
But it fits so perfectly when you learn her intentions and you learn what her and Roman are really up to. It makes you wonder, is it a facade? Is it a yin and yang kind of situation where he's the stoic, like, leader of the coven and she's the party gal?
Right.
It's so interesting.
But I mean, and having, like, at the end of the film, you do see her take, like, even in the I mean, we'll get into this more, but in the hallucinatory, you know, rape scene, you know, she's a completely different person in that scene from the scenes that we've seen earlier. Right. So I do think it is a bit of a, like, I'm playing the nagging wife, and, like, you know, the little that old woman that comes over and is just going to snoop around at all your stuff and look at your mail and be, you know.
Oh, how much is this chair? Oh, how much did that set you back? It's like, no, none of your business. I think it really is to just keep you off guard. She has figured out that, you know, Roman has his kind of preacher-ish kind of way that he speaks, the way that he orates and all of that. And she, you know, fusses around and, you know, keeps everybody from getting too comfortable, or I think it might also be a defense mechanism to keep people from getting too close. Like, by forcing friendship on somebody, that is the easiest way to get them to back off. Right. Because you're just like, stop. I need you to go back to your apartment. Get out of my house. And she's able to plant those little seeds and constantly, I almost wonder if then she's trying to get her to drink the shakes the whole time. Like, is that her end game of, like, you need to drink these all the time? Because when she stops, she starts to feel better, and she never really catches on that it's the thing. But then once, you know, she's had the baby and they're keeping the baby from her and they're keeping her drugged with all those pills, it's just, I have questions about their motives and their intentions for their whole plan, which means that I need to watch it again.
And I do think it's like a, I think there's, I believe there is some, like, dialogue in there where it's like, you know, it has to, like, this is the fertile time, like they need to do it now.
Well,
or
I mean,
they're gonna.
She's ovulating, so they had planned to have sex then to try to have a baby anyway. But then he's obviously told them that, so then they're in on it and planning all of it and, you know, using their magic.
It also makes me wonder, like, they had to, like, when Rosemary and Guy first move in, they probably see that and they're like, oh my God, a couple, like, we can, yes, this will work.
Well, from what I've read about the story of, you know, them coming upon it, is that through their witchcraft and everything, they were able to know that Rosemary is near, you know, she's considering it, so they actually kill the old woman. That, because the way that she dies, I mean, she goes into a coma and she dies. That's how the actor dies, that's how Hutch dies, that's what they do. That's how they poison them. So in the backstory of it, they know that Rosemary and Guy are thinking about moving in. She's a perfect candidate to be the mother of the Antichrist. So they kill the old woman. And then, oh, hey, it just happens to be the apartment right next to ours. Wow. And they are trying to get Terry to be the surrogate mother of the Antichrist as well. And then when she doesn't, she meets her demise.
Right.
Is it the egg or the chicken first? Which happened? Do they know that Terry's on the outs, so then they go to Rosemary? Do they know Rosemary's going to move in, so they outs Terry?
And with the what was the other? Well, I mean, there's so many layers. But I mean, with Terry, it was just like there's so many details. Like when they first meet in the laundromat, and she shows the little charm that has the tannis root in it, and the smell, the smell, and then how that pays off later on when she shows up, and it's like, I'm really glad that you don't smell like that anymore because Dr. Saperstein always smells like that.
Right.
And
interesting though that the receptionist isn't also in on his covenly activities.
Right.
I guess he's able to keep he's got a good work-life balance, that Dr. Saperstein.
That evil Dr. Saperstein. I also love the little, it's just like it's almost like a Hitchcockian type of way to just kind of get your interest and kind of get you spooked out about something that's just so trivial. Like when they first get there to the apartment and the guy is showing them, and then that chest is in front of it's like, she couldn't have moved that there. It's like, what is she keeping?
Our friend's comment was, this is the 60s. That probably weighs 500 pounds. And this little old lady was able to move it by herself. She's that terrified. And that's your first signal, like, there's something really bad going on in there. And then the fact that that's actually true of the Dakota. I did a little bit of research on it because I'm fascinated. It's such a gorgeous building. But it was built in the either 1870s or 1880s. It had its own electricity and running water then. It had its own power plant within the building. It was built that far away because the owners and the builders wanted people to have a respite. They wanted to be able to get out of the city. And at that point, Central Park wasn't a thing. The Upper West Side hadn't developed, so it was literally out in the middle of nowhere, which is why he called it the Dakota. Because they're like, oh my God, it's so far out there, before the Dakotas were established. So it's like this faraway respite. But all of the apartments are interconnected. So that the idea was, whenever they were having a party or something, they just open up all the units and then they could just mingle with each other. That's insane. Also, it ranges between 2-bedroom and 20 bedrooms. You can have a 20-bedroom apartment. For what? I mean, that's just luxury living for you. But obviously made famous by John Lennon living there and being assassinated outside. Just crazy. It's such a perfect setting for it.
Right. And it's like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. It's like
yes, it's based on a real thing, but you go to the hotel, it's not that hotel. And
that even ties into it's a haunted house movie, but it's not your typical traditional haunted house. And then, all right, I guess we got to talk about the scene.
Yeah.
Because
is it a dream? Is it real? Is it a dream? Is it real? It's real. Turns out it's real.
It's real, but what is fascinating about it, and I'm interested because I haven't read the book, so I'm wondering if these details are in there, but there's so many visual cues in that dream that relate to a real scene that happened before.
Right.
Like the way when they get into the elevator and her point of view of the elevator with the bellboy right there and turning to her is reflected in that dream. And like that, even that type of visual cue keeps you off guard because it's like, okay, because it's so easy to fall into, well, if this is a dream, that would make sense because she's using stuff that is from her real life that is, making her feel like, she's on a bed in the ocean and all this. crazy imagery. And then when we get down to it and what happens, it's so disturbing.
Yeah.
And it's, even for a film in 1968, it is crazy disturbing.
Yeah.
Because you know what's going on, and the fact that, like, you know, even if she is hallucinating some details, that guy's there with them.
Yeah. The act is happening. Those are her neighbors. That's her husband. Mm-hmm. When you think that it's a dream, it's messed up enough.
Right.
You're like, wow, that is a disturbing, messed up dream. But then once the coin drops and you realize that it's that, you know, lucid and strange because she's drugged, that you're just like, wait a second. Like, you can almost take that film off and see that it's actually happening, and then you just feel disgusting. Mm-hmm. Like, what, why did this happen? And why did Guy let it happen?
Right.
Because he's a selfish actor.
And was that do you think that was supposed to be, do you think that the act actually happened in the Castavet's apartment?
Yes, absolutely. I think that once she passed out, you know, they opened up the closet and slid her in. Mm-hmm. Although by then, did she have shelves yet? That would have been difficult. I mean, she's unconscious. They probably just took her out the front door.
Right.
Ugh. And then you have so many cues throughout the film of whenever Guy leaves. He's like, I'm going to go see the Cassavetes. Why?
Right.
Why are you going to talk to your old neighbors?
Because at first he was just like, and that's
and
how
he was so against them.
Yes.
He's like, ugh.
It's like, I don't want to, like, once you get in with people like that, you'll never get rid of them.
Foreshadowing. It's a brilliant screenplay.
It is.
Nominated for Academy Award, didn't win. It's just surprising. I don't know what won that year, but I would be interested to see.
Producers.
Really?
Yeah.
A comedy?
Yeah.
Huh. How about that?
The only Oscar Mel Brooks ever got.
That's surprising.
This is surrounded with just great, like, all the best people at this time worked on this film. So just a thing about the costume and production design. Mm-hmm. So they were a married couple. It was Richard and Anthea Silbert. So it was, they did like a tag team, and they did Chinatown. They did a couple other movies too throughout the 60s and the 70s. But these two films, particularly with Roman Polanski, are like their prized jewels. And just, again, just that Polanski is so attentive to all those details and wanting particular colors, and just seeing the work that they do. Mm-hmm. You know, Robin always hates this moment, but the moment that she comes home and she has the new haircut, mm-hmm. and she's like, it's Fidel Sassoon. Mm-hmm. Even that type of detail is, because for her, she looks at it and she says, that's just such an obvious, like, wink to that style and that, you know, and like, it's just, it seems like Roman Polanski was like friends with Fidel Sassoon, and that's why, you know, they just did it.
Sure.
But even like that type of detail, like that was in at the time. Yeah. And that
was her haircut for the TV show that she was on.
Right. And that, even that puts you into, like, it's so real.
Yeah.
And
so much so that as he's writing the screenplay, there's the moment where a guy talks about seeing an advertisement for a shirt in the newspaper or in the New Yorker. He's like, I'm going to get this shirt. Polanski goes to R11 and is like, what issue was that? I can't find it. He goes, I made it up. I don't know.
I assumed every magazine had a shirt thing.
Do they not just have shirt ads all the time? But he was so specific and wanted things to be so accurate that he was like, I need to know the date of that magazine so I can see what shirt it was so I can put him in it. It's like, just pick one. I don't know.
Even the casting of John Cassavetes as Guy, you know, because the producer of this film is famed producer Bob Evans, who was a bit of a character throughout this time period. Yeah. And if you've ever seen the documentary A Kid Stays in the Picture, that's Bob Evans' story, and he's just a crazy dude. Yeah. But he's produced some really fabulous movies, including this movie and The Godfather. And you know, names that were thrown around were Jack Nicholson, Robert Redford for the part of Guy, and it was Polanski's idea to say, let's do John Cassavetes, which was strange because, you know, he's not a trained actor, not a movie star. You know, he was most famous for making, you know, basically creating the independent cinema in the 60s with his films that he financed himself. And he even says that, you know, the next movie that he directed was financed by him.
Being in that.
Yeah. But he, you know, he's fine.
Yeah.
He's not, you know, he doesn't blow you away with his acting, but he's just
absolutely perfect casting, because if it had been a name actor or a face actor, every time he came on screen, it would pull focus from Mia Farrow. Right. And the fact that he is just kind of a guy, and his name is literally Guy, and he wants to, you know, be a famous actor and whatnot, it's like, you're just a drop in the bucket. You're just a face in the crowd. So let's just focus on what's going on with her. So his, like, rise and everything is happening off camera. We never see any of that. It's all isolated within Rosemary's life.
Yep. I also think because John Cassavetes, his films are known for being very improvisational.
Yes.
And I think that's also what Polanski's cued into with his casting, because I always loved and appreciated their relationship in the film and how that manifests itself between Mia Farrow and John Cassavetes. Especially when they're being shown the apartment, there's all these like cute little things that they do, and they're whispering to each other, and there's all these little jokes. You know, she goes over and she sees the potted plants, and it's like, it's an herb garden. He's like, is there marijuana there?
Yeah.
And then, you know, and even like in their little intimate moments, like you get they've been together for a while. Yeah. You know, they're having dinner on the floor like you do when you first move in somewhere, and you know, she just casually says, let's make love, and he's just like, all right, you know, and do the thing and take off. And,
as it was two married couples watching that scene when we watched it, we both really keyed into that of like, yeah, when you're young and, you know, you first start dating, when you have sex, it's like spontaneous and great, and you know, you knock stuff off the table. But when you've been together for a while and when you've been married, somebody's like, let's have sex, you're like, okay,
all right,
let's take off my shoes and my socks, and oh, hey, will you fold this? You always fold better than I do. And like, it's not spontaneous, and it's not, you know, wild and passionate like that, but you are still very much in love.
Yes.
But it's like, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, give me 2 minutes. And then you can make that happen. But yeah, we, having moved so many times, that scene resonated really well. Where you're like, oh, here we are just having dinner on the floor.
And
don't even have a bed yet.
I like to think that is a, you know, John Cassavetes being very improvisational and being very open to that, and you know, just Polanski being that attentive to the details. That was just kind of like a harmonious collaboration between the two of them, and working with Mia Farrow, and she just being awesome and saying like, you know, yes, let's make this as authentic as possible.
Yeah. They didn't get along though, Cassavetes and Polanski.
Really?
They fought a lot on set, from what I've read, to the point where they were filming a scene and Cassavetes was criticizing Polanski in his direction, to the point where he just goes, "John, shut up." And he threatened to walk off the film at one point. But it was actually because of his improvisational style that he was used to performing that way. And Polanski was like, I want, say the words as they're written, do the movements as they're written, and just do what I say. And Cassavetes is like, that's not how I work. And you can see that in a few moments in the film where you can tell that Cassavetes is going on his own instincts instead of what's directed. I mean, there's one moment, and it struck me as somebody who's beginning to collect vinyl after their party scene, when he's starting to clean up a little bit, and she's talking about how, you know, all the girls think she should go to this other doctor, and he's like, that's crazy. You need to go to the one doctor. And in that scene, I wanted to be like, anyone in their right mind would just be like, okay, yes, go to a doctor. I care about you. I don't want you to die. But he's so friggin' selfish.
Right.
But as he's starting to clean up, he walks out of the room and steps on some of the records on the floor. And I don't think that would have been scripted accordingly. I feel like anybody aware of what's going on would have stepped around. But that struck me as like, whoa, what are you doing, man? Don't step on your vinyl. That's just weirdo me.
I gotta see that now. I never noticed that.
Yeah. I was just like, don't. Ooh, I wonder if he was supposed to do that. That's always my question when I see little mistakes like that. Was that supposed to happen?
Right.
Was that an actual accident? Yeah.
That scene is particularly hard too because one, you get like at the party, like you said, that everyone is saying how awful she looks.
Yeah.
And by the way, like the way that her gradual decline is charted so wonderfully.
Yeah.
And just the fact that like, that haircut is there because if she had her regular long shoulder length hair and she went pale like that, it would not be as striking and emphasized as if she didn't have that short hair. So that's just beautifully done. But, in that scene, all of her friends are just taking her in, guys
Girls
trying
only.
to get and shutting him out. And then afterwards, it's just like, they're all no good bees and, they need to mind their own business.
Right.
And it's just so harsh, in particular when thinking, why he's saying that.
And knowing that they're right.
It's also like he's got such a great moment at the end when you get how much he's groveling at this point, but he just comes up to her and he's just like, hey, I know this is rough, but I feel like if we get through this, we'll be able to press forward and we'll have.
If we get through this, guy,
like, what the hell? So
you sold me to the devil.
Spit in the face. Thank you, Mia Farrow.
Yes.
There you go.
What kind of monster are you, Guy Woodhouse, that you think that there's any coming back from this?
Yeah.
You birthed the Antichrist. We're still good though, right? Right? Bump it.
I'm still a famous actor, right? Yeah. The ending, man.
Yeah. That ending is it's so many things because spoiler. She goes in, the coven is there, they're all gathered. The baby's in the bassinet and she looks in and it's the Antichrist.
How amazing is that?
We don't see it.
That we don't see it, but her reaction.
What do you think was in there?
Like really in there?
Yeah. To get a reaction like that. Because as an actor, it's really hard to react to nothing. It's really hard to be like, all right, I'm going to imagine this thing and I'm going to react to it. So that is such a genuine, powerful reaction. What was in there? Had to be something.
You know what? Not to get too dark, but just because I know the type of director that Polanski is, and that he, manipulating an actor to get a response. Polanski, just to get in a little bit of the the prehistory of what he's gone through he knows how horrible the world can be.
Yes.
He was a Holocaust survivor. It was around this time that he was married to Sharon Tate, and she was brutally murdered by the Manson family. This is a guy that knows actual horror.
Yeah.
So I'm almost thinking that he, whatever he saw, and that he remembers in like just an image or a memory that he just can't shake.
Yeah.
That he told her that when you look into that carriage, that is what you see.
Yeah.
Because it is such a. I know she's a remarkable actress, but there is just something about that look that she gives is just complete horror.
Utter horror.
And that reaction is why you can get away with not showing what's in the carriage.
100%. Because just seeing her reacting to it and not seeing it for yourself makes it that much scarier. And that's why you don't show the monster.
Right.
the monster's in there. That's why it's more effective that we don't see the shark in Jaws that much. That's why monster movies are that much more effective when we don't see the monsters, and alien movies are more effective when we don't see the aliens. Because it's so much scarier to see someone afraid than to see what they're afraid of.
There was a friend in college, after she knew that I'd watched Rosemary's Baby for the first time, she was recalling it, and she's like, and at the end when they show, the baby, and I'm like, they don't show the baby, and she's like, no, she picks it up and she puts it over her shoulder, and you see the eyes, the glowing eyes, in the baby's face. Yeah. I'm like, no, you don't.
That doesn't happen.
And I'm almost, for the longest time I thought that maybe, because I'd never seen the sequel and don't have any intention to, but that she saw that and maybe that's in that.
Yeah.
Because how awful, I'm like, thank God what you're saying right now isn't in the movie, because I just imagine like how awful it would be if she had like a doll on her shoulder and you see two glowing eyes coming out of it, like
a Jawa or something.
Right.
You're like, what is this?
That's not
Boo. And that's when you crumble up your program and you throw it at the screen and you walk out. But instead, you never do.
Right. And then as I've watched it more and more, as she sees the baby, and then she's yelling at all of them, and it does a kind of dissolve to the devil's eyes.
Which you saw when the rape was happening.
Right. Yeah. And I'm almost wondering that like subconsciously she thought that she was seeing the babies. But either way, it's
interesting
stunning.
That she had that memory of something that's not even in the film.
And something that would absolutely completely ruin the film.
Yeah.
But it's so remarkable that you don't see anything, and it's just a true testament to that Hitchcockian level of filmmaking, where what you don't see is way more powerful than.
Yeah. Would you like to learn some trivia?
Yes, I would.
We mentioned before we were rolling the scene where she walks into traffic. She's pregnant and she's, freaking out because her whole world is crumbling around her. She actually walked into New York traffic in that scene. She's got the pregnancy belly on, and she's like, "What? We're not going to stop traffic?" He's like, "No, just do it. No one will hit a pregnant woman." So it's literally her walking across the street and Polanski with a handheld camera, because even the camera guy didn't want to do it, and they just walk into traffic, and traffic stops because it's a pregnant lady and a guy with a camera, which is weird, but it's a pregnant lady. And right before that, when she's in the phone booth and she calls the actor who went blind and guy got his part, that's Tony Curtis on the phone. She didn't know it was going to be Tony Curtis either. So when he picks up, her look of confusion is genuine, because she's like, I know this voice. Who is this? But she obviously can't say anything because she's in it. All of that was done in one take, too. That was one shot. And also in that shot, the man who comes up to the phone booth and is waiting to get in is William Castle, who was originally originally bought the rights to the book before it was even published, because he wanted to direct it. Robert Evans was like, sure, you're not going to direct it though. I'm going to get this Roman Polanski guy.
And the reason being is because William Castle is most notably known for very
schlocky horror films.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're going to make this legit.
Right. I don't think you're the right person for this.
Yeah. I thought this was a crazy coincidence. So it's set at the Bramford, which is actually the Dakota, which John Lennon lived at and was killed outside. The song Dear Prudence is about Mia Farrow's sister, Prudence. Thought that was crazy small world. At this time, Mia Farrow and Frank Sinatra were married. He actually delivered divorce papers to her on set of this film. She took the role. He was worried that her star was going to rise higher than his. She thought that he thought that she should be more of the stay-at-home wife. They fought over it. She almost dropped out. She went to Robert Evans and was like, I can't do this picture. I need to drop out. He showed her like an hour rough cut and was like, you were going to get an Oscar nomination for this. Convinced her to stay on. And then Frank Sinatra was like, all right, fine. Delivered the papers to her on set in front of the casting crew, which is just such a jerk move. Can you imagine? You're in the middle of working, and somebody just walks in and goes, excuse me, you've been served. He's like, these are divorce papers. And the whole crew being like,
thanks, Frank.
nice job, Blue Eyes.
She was nominated, right?
No.
Oh, my God.
This film only got 2 Oscar nominations. Ruth Gordon, who won for Best Supporting Actress and Best Adapted Screenplay. Crazy Town. This is Stanley Kubrick's favorite film. How about that?
This was actually one of the reasons why he wanted to do The Shining, because he's like, I don't like that another director is making the best horror movie. I'm gonna
throw my hat in the ring. Do we have that on the schedule at some point?
Yes.
Good, because we have to talk about the documentary, which is nuts. Absolutely nuts. Maurice Evans, who plays Hutch, her friend and confidant, who discovers the truth behind all this, played Samantha Stevens' father on Bewitched. So he was a witch. Takes one to know one.
All of them
witches. Abe Saperstein, Rosemary's doctor, was actually the real name of the founder of the Harlem Globetrotters. That's a name. Abe Saperstein. We already talked about Sharon Tate in the Manson family murders. This was Charles Grodin's big break.
Yep.
He plays Dr. Hill, her original doctor. And then once all of the craziness goes down, she goes back to him pleading for help. And you think that he's going to help, but nope, he's in on it too.
Oh, when that door opens and they all walk in, it's just
like no, Chuck, no. And it's crazy because I didn't recognize him in his first scene. But in that scene, I was like, is that him? Look it up. And I couldn't remember his name, but I was like, that's the guy from Beethoven, of all things. But also Hope and Faith, which is one of my favorite 90s movies. And then he turns out to be Judas. We've talked about the sequel, Son of Rosemary, but I found this to be a tremendous bummer. In the book, it turns out that it's all a dream.
No.
No, Ira, no! She dreams everything that happens in the first film. And then when she wakes up, her and Guy haven't yet gone to the Bramford. So she's like, we shouldn't go there. I feel bad about it. And he's like, all right, fine, we won't go. Negating
everything
that happened.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's
Ira, buddy, no. There is a lullaby that's sung near the end of the film. It's actually sung by Mia Farrow. What can't she do?
It is haunting.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's it.
Just before we wrap up, just influences that I wanted to get out there. We already talked about The Shining, that Stanley Kubrick saw this and was like, I need to throw my hat.
Yep.
Jordan Peele has
named
this as a reference for Get Out.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, even the way that this film serves as social commentary for women's liberation and female-centric characters. The Witch. I didn't like The Witch.
Which one's The Witch?
So it came out last year. Everyone was all about
with
it,
like the period appropriate dialogue and stuff. Yeah, we watched it too. Great until the end, and then.
Well, here's the reason why
atmospherically great, performance is great. Ultimately, I think I gave it like maybe 1.5 stars.
And the reason for me was like it had such an opportunity to make a comment on religion and faith at this time because you've got this thing that's happening and a family at this time would be like, oh my God, it's a witch, burn the witch.
Yeah.
And like this film doesn't tell you what is going on, so you're forced to be like, is she crazy? Is she not crazy? Is this really happening? This can't really be happening, right? Yeah. 10 minutes into The Witch, they're like, it's a witch.
Yeah.
So where's the
tension?
Right.
Then you're just sitting around waiting for the witch, and then when it shows up, you're like, huh. And then you see the monster, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. So that's why, my love of this film and the way this film is structured and the way this film is made is the reason why I didn't like The Witch. Because a lot of people, when The Witch came out, you know, everyone was so gung-ho about it, and Stephen King saying, like, it's the scariest film I've ever seen. And I watched it and was just like, no. And that's why. Mother, that just came out, Darren Aronofsky's film. He is quoted as saying that I haven't seen it yet, but that it's loosely based on Rosemary's Baby and that structure.
Right.
And when the first time I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, is this going to be similar? And that kind of, I don't know if he said that because all the things I'm hearing about Mother is that it's not the movie that you're expecting to see.
Right.
So I'm wondering if he just said that just to kind of throw people off guard and throw people off the scent of what it actually is and surprise people, or if there is something else going on there that's a little Rosemary's Baby-esque. But that is all I got on that.
As always, I highly recommend the Criterion Collection of this. The essays in there are really, really good. Ira Levin also has a chunk from, I think, a memoir talking about this film and just like what was going on in his life and how he wanted to do it, and kind of this was the first film that kind of created the rise of Satan-centric films. You have a bunch of Satan movies that come after this. You have Exorcist and things of that nature. And he actually got a lot of hate mail because of this book from Christian groups being like, why are you bringing the devil into the light? Why blah, 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 blah. And there are rumors that, like, you know, a famous Satanist was the guy in the mask and the rape scene, or like he was a technical consultant for the satanic rituals and stuff. All of that has been since debunked, but just, you know, he's a writer. He's like, he was a playwright and a novelist, and his last play had been a flop, and his last book hadn't been well received. So he's like, I gotta do something. I gotta feed my family here, and he writes this amazing story that just from the treatment, Hollywood was like, we got to get this. This is going to be something, and it turned out to be great, great.
A lot of famous directors too said Billy Wilder is quoted as saying, you know, I wouldn't touch Rosemary's Baby with a 10-foot pole. Like, no. I'm not directing this film.
No.
Which is very surprising.
There was a mini-series that was produced in 2008 starring Zoe Saldana of Guardians of the Galaxy fame and other such things. Set in Paris, not well received. They made a sequel film that was not well received, like I said. But interesting connection within like the genre of Satan films. Mia Farrow went on to play Damien's nurse, or Damien's nanny, in the Omen remake, which makes sense because it's a small part, and you know, it's all for you, Damien. Classic. But yeah, this was great. Really enjoyed Rosemary's Baby. Polanski nonsense aside, this was really great.
A great true horror movie. So next week we're going to change things up a little bit, and we're actually going to be talking about 1950s creature features, and we're going to be discussing the giant ant movie, Them. You know, 50s science fiction films when I was a kid were like everything to me.
Oh yeah, Sunday afternoon movies, man.
And it was awesome when I first got to college. There was a class on it.
And it was, really?
And a professor said like at first I would be like, this is not the type of thing I would think in college we would be looking at.
Right.
But he's like, no, these films are important because during the time of the atomic bomb, there was some genuine fear, and this is how that fear manifested itself. So these films,
while we were making these movies, Japan was making Godzilla.
Yep.
And Godzilla are excellent. And actually, right now on Hulu are a bunch of Godzilla movies.
Check them out.
Which is great.
So that's going to be next week. We're going to talk all about it.
Yeah, we did a run of 50 sci-fi on the podcast a few years ago, and they were so much fun. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, The Man from Planet X, all of those are just excellent. I'm excited. And speaking of horror movies and Halloween and things, we are actually going to be doing a Halloween special this year on Halloween. It's going to be us with guests Devin Ewalt and Rachel Riendo talking about horror movies. All things horror, what scares us, our favorite horror directors, our favorite genres, that kind of stuff.
In color, out of suits.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun, all decorated, spooky and stuff. So we're really looking forward to that. So be sure to look for that on Halloween night on Channel 15, which will be a delight. All right, so until next time.
I'm David Metzger.
I'm Lincoln L. Hayes. See ya.